This chapter actually gave me a very nostalgic feeling of early Black Clover when people had no idea of like the dangers of anti-magic. Because Nama is not looking good. I mean, he's looking chopped in half. So he's, I would assume, out of the way, and maybe the whole fusion thing will come after Lilith like takes the big hand and merges with it or something. I don't really know, but I don't see Nama really getting back up from this. Because with Zagrid, when Zagrid got hurt, he just said heal. Wound heal. Like, he'd have his hand back. He wouldn't be going in there right now with just the big floppy goofball giant arm. He would fix himself and then plan of what to do next. Nama just decided, well, I lost my hand. I'm excited. And I'm going to just go right in. They had no real plan. And I'm just waiting for the reveal that, like, Zagrid is from, like, the 3rd floor or 4th floor. And the whole idea that these guys are more impressive than Zagrid can go out the window. Because, legitimately, they haven't done anything that makes me think they're higher. And, granted, they're on the Kulfok tree, but I feel like they're just the best at the first level. And somebody like Zagrid could be, you know, higher end in a much higher floor, but not be a Kulfok tree person on that floor. I don't know. It's still something in there, unless it's outright stated. I know there's some like wording and like ifs and maybes over the devil they just fought, talking about like Megikyo and stuff. But Megikyo should be like way higher up on the tree than these guys anyway. Like Nama and Lilith are like a classic example of relying too much on just like your hacks, and then the second they run into something that can mess with their hacks, they're done. It reminded me so much of when Urza fought Midnight, and then she figured out how like the weaknesses of his magic, and then walked through them at that point. It's just like, okay, I figured it out, bam. And that's what happens when you rely just on a very specific hacks. And Namad and Lilith just got caught out. So I like the whole part where there was noting from Libe about meeting Nama and Lilith again. Because one of the things that a lot of people have been writing on the theory of is that it was Nama that actually threw Libe at the gate. And I'm hoping that's stated in this next chapter. Because it looks like it was hinted, but he didn't have any follow-up there. That was just that Libe moment. But it might be one of those things that's going to happen when devils die, that he interacts with them always in his head. Or, not the head, but like that weird, like, devil silhouette realm. Because, like, remember when Zagrid died, that's who Libe and him last saw. Like, Libe went and talked to him before he, like, fully died. And I wish, like, there would be, like, a name for that, maybe, like, some pseudo-underworld or something. Just because it seems connected, unless he somehow went into Zagrid's mind. I never really thought of, like, how he did that. Or maybe that'll be kind of further continued upon next chapter. Because I don't see Namak, like, surviving this. Because granted, he doesn't have the regeneration that Zagrid had. Because Zagrid would have just said healed, fix his hand. Namak got his hand cut off and fought the rest of the chapter with no hand. If the whole fusion thing happens, that's one thing. Maybe they're just two halves of a greater devil, which would make a lot more sense. I think that'd be better of like how Asta could just completely trash these ones, and they just fought unintelligently, as they're just not fighting at the full capabilities of what this devil should be. Well, we'll see. It could just be that there's the two of them. Maybe Lilith can take the power of Nama now that he's dead, do the whole like arm fusion thing that a lot of people believe, or just start fighting intelligently. Like, because the thing is, like I said, it's like when Black Clover was at very early areas, and anti-magic was just a complete and total new thing to all these characters, so they weren't expecting it. And because you can still have a power level gap, but anti-magic is still anti-magic. And the way that Asta has always been in the series is that anti-magic has been a factor. And it would come down to teamwork and strategy, or Asta's own technique to, hit the anti-magic on the opponent. Because at the end of the day, as long as anti-magic is as hacks as it is within their world, it's still confined to these swords, and Asta's the ones using them. So they're tools that he's utilizing. He just has unfair tools that he's been honing throughout all of Black Clover. And so when you see Nama and Lilith, like, obviously they should know there's something up. Asta just cut off his hand. They're seeing it mess with spells, and they just don't adjust their strategy. This because just go back and look at a lot of early Black Clover chapters. A lot of the time, Asta would just be able to overcome a situation, you know, get into his opponent's blind spots, or they just don't notice him because they were too reliant on mana sensing, and Asta would be able to beat them around these kind of things. And then eventually characters started to get, like, you know, more knowledgeable of, okay, fighting anti-magic, gotta deal with that. Like, Dante figured it out, and I don't know why Nama and Lilith don't just think, oh wow, this is something that clearly can deal with our abilities, we should be careful about it, in any way. The only way that I think it's going to really pan out in a good manner from this first gate, like, for the Devil's side, for the Devil's team and the Spade, is if Lilith starts fighting more intelligently, starts, like, actually honing up to the level of character it's supposed to be, unless there's some form of confirmation about Zagrid. Like, if we could get something, I think, about Zagrid's information, it could really set this whole fight, like, so much in a better light, of Asta being able just to completely smash through Nama. Is if maybe, again, like, Zagrid's just a higher floor, and they beat a higher devil, and these guys are just lower level, and just, I don't know, because when it comes down to, like, the OP-ness of Asta, it's one thing to give him this level of skills, but if he's able to do this before a devil can even, like, start even really intelligently fighting back, or if he's just going to always catch them on their over self-confidence, then we're going to go through devils fast, and we're just going to start seeing them get cut down and cleaved. I'm alright with Asta being strong, but if Asta is going to just start running through these guys, and we're not going to see, like, other characters really fight devils, I think that's going to be that's just going to be like a big race to the end. It'll be too fast. So I'm actually really hoping for the fusion thing, and it's really just these guys aren't actually that powerful. Because otherwise Asta still has, because if you notice the chest marker on him, when he notes that it's already been a minute, one of the lines kind of, like, blots out. It just kind of, like, swells up. And then at the end, when Asta used the Demon Destroyer Sword and canceled the effects on the devils, another one of the spots, like, came out. So I'm wondering if that's just, it's been 1 minute, or if Asta, whenever he uses one of these higher end techniques, maybe it tanks up one of the spots. I'm just seeing it as essentially like something like Toshiro's Bankai is just running on a set timer. Maybe it's doing something, because one thing that happened while Asta is fighting, and it could just be the swords, is his armor did actually transform a little bit. Like, when he's holding the Demon Destroyer Sword, part of his crown extends out, and he's got, like, all these jagged claws on it. I'm wondering exactly how that's going to fully just transform, because I've seen some fan arts over, like, the mask growing over his face, which could work because of the inspiration that Tabata has for Berserk. When it came to Berserk's, the Berserk armor for Guts, is it kind of grows over him as he's using it. So that could definitely be one of the things that is going to happen before the timer goes out, or if it's evolving. Maybe this is just the first stage of Asta's form, or maybe after a while he has to switch places with Libe kind of thing. I don't really know. There's a lot of, like, set ideas of where Tabata could take this in the evolution of this armor's mindset, if he is going with this progression thing. Because I don't think it's a different sword, or a different form per sword. It could be, given that he's using the Demon Destroyer on the side, that it's transforming out of the form that we've seen so far, or if it's going to be a evolution kind of thing. Because he also has, like, these spikes on his back, and I don't know fully well if where Tabata is going with it. It's definitely going to be one of those things that we're seeing presented as we go. Like, the first time we see the Devil Union, we don't really get anything other than, like, Asta can fly easier. He's got more casual range with his with his black dividers. He's got he's more physically strong. There wasn't anything really that was a surprise or anything really that flashy presented. It was really just to show off him doing the form. Whereas here we see the Demon Destroyer just kind of do like a quick... It's essentially what I would imagine is like a magic EMP, and it would just kind of like flash cancel everything out in the area. It'd be a little OP if Asta could just kind of like make a full anti-magic zone. Just imagining kind of like, how Mana Zone works, but it's just like he just makes a null space where magic is not. I think that would make Asta too OP. I think the anti-magic pulse would be better, because it wouldn't be like as unfair as it would be in Black Clover. Because if he has just like an anti-magic Mana Zone, then he's going to be killing a lot of people. He's going to be running through a lot of these devils, because again, one of the things about the devils is they're very cocky. And they're very, like, overconfident in their abilities. So if they're all just going to just run into, like, a null space where Asta can just cleave them, then it's going to be quick that he's going to go through a lot of these dudes. I like the idea more of, like, just a pulse. It just shuts off your abilities. Because it'd be like, if he was fighting Dante, it would be like Dante would probably shift out of his body magic and his gravity and revert back to base form and have to reactivate all his abilities. I think that'd be cooler. And it would just give Asta openings to do stuff rather than just saying, like, yeah, while you're in this zone, no magic for you. But, I don't know, we'll see. It's definitely, one of the things about it is the mechanics specifically. Like, when we get descriptions of how each of them, these abilities work, I'm sure it'll make a lot more, it'll feel a lot better for the upcoming parts of the series. Because legitimately, if Asta could just do this, if he could just rush an opponent, create a null space of magic, and then cleave them, like, he's gonna kill a lot of these devils real quick. Especially if they're all gonna be like freaking Bozo Nama and just run in and go attack him. And like, I've talked more about some of the areas in the chapter and less about like very specifics of the chapter. Like, the chapter starts out, we get Finral. I liked seeing Finral. I don't really know why Tabata's not showing his the upper parts of his face, given that we've already seen Finral in the time skip. But that's something I would expect with like Magna, or a character he's not going to reveal the full design of. That was the thing that really confused me about that panel every time I saw it. But Asta, was rushing in. He went to go save Noct. You see Guido Mello, he's really upset because he's worried that if Noct ends up dying, then the 4 devils that are contracted with him, Guido Mello included, is going to be in trouble with the other devils, which I like that. I really like that's one of the things that they have is they're still devils. They're looking out also for themselves, but they have a good relationship with Noct. They don't want Noct to die, and they obviously seem to like each other. He's got his own little crew of evil devil Pokemon. But after that point, Asta's here. I really like how he casually sweeps the Demon Slayer sword across Noct, just right in front of him, and cancels out the magic from the devils. I thought that was actually really cool. That was one of my favorite parts of the chapter, just because I think visually it's really nice for Asta as like kind of like a presence effect. Like, it's like one of the things that is important for like certain characters is what they bring just as they're arriving. I know that's one thing that's described about Superman. Is one of the things about Superman's character when you're doing it right is if you're in some super dangerous situation, some big bad villain is doing something, Superman showing up and you're just a little bit at ease because you know how crazy powerful Superman is. It's like, oh man, Superman's here, he's got this. It's kind of like when it's kind of like with One Punch Man, what they've done with Saitama is he's the whole setup is like characters fighting the big terrible threat until Saitama gets there, and then Saitama gets there and you're like, all right, we're in good hands. Do your thing, be OP. It's really cool, I think, with Asta that he did this in this chapter, because it really gives him this cool warrior of anti-magic vibe to him. I really like that, but like a good knight. And that's one of the things I really like about his him having armor, is Asta's essentially a knight now. And I was really happy about that. You had his whole black form was cool, but it really was just demonic energy kind of going over him and making that form. Whereas always had like a really sick general outfit. He was always dressed well, and he had his his spirit dive end up evolving in a really much more majestic, kind of like cool, detailed, badass way for probably just general visual ways. Asta's is cool, but Asta's was always very rough in comparison. And then you look at Valkyrie dressed Noelle. Now Asta actually has like demon armor. It looks really cool in my opinion. I do wish he was a little bit bigger. I do agree with that, but he is merged with Libe, so it's fine with me. Just the general concept of things that they're fused, so they're gonna kind of like be at maybe like a size between them. But also the panel when Libe was really excited to fight these two, I really liked, because he's probably got a lot of memories relating back to these two assholes, and they're just going in, and like the fight itself was really quick, and the devils, and one of the reasons I think legitimately Zagrid, I am so still on board with the Zagrid being above these devils train until it's outright stated, because like we've seen Zagrid deal with anti-magic, and he immediately is like, okay, I gotta adapt to this, I gotta figure out what to do. And then he started making like he had like spells making the Blade of Storms that was having swords made of both magic and real matter. He was just such a better devil, and he's so smart, much smarter. I'm gonna be really upset if he's weaker than them, just because of how much better of a level of performance, not just as like fight wise, but as a fighter. Like he was smart, and on top of that, his power was so versatile. Just because his doesn't have burn all, freeze all statements, he had the freaking trident, man. I'll just be upset that in the whole scheme of things that Zagrid will be below these guys, but it doesn't really matter. But it's like a personal thing, because I do really like Zagrid. I thought he was really cool, and I think he deserves a spot above these guys. It'll be upsetting if they're just more powerful than with literally nothing cooler about them. I mean, even I think their devil outfits aren't as good as his. They're just wearing like weird. It's funny for Lilith, because Lilith looks nice in this V-cut like demonic dress, but Nama just looks like he's wearing a V-neck and some pants, a super V actually. I don't really know what that would be, but Asta just pretty much comes in, blanks the magic in the area, and just cleaves Nama down the middle. And again, I don't think that he can regenerate from this, because he would have already regenerated his hand. And Asta just, like, clean cut him down. The only way that I can see him living after this chapter is if it shows that he can regenerate from the damage he's already taken. And if the opening panel in the next chapter is like Nama's body splitting apart and then seeing where his heart is, like exposing his weakness. If he has the same heart core, you have to, the same thing as Zagrid, like if you have to destroy the heart, then that has to be shown in the next chapter. And if it's not that, legitimately I swear it, if Nama is just chopped in half and we don't see like a heart cut, or we don't see anything involving a devil's heart having to be destroyed, I'm going to just go with that and assume that is a higher level devil thing. Just because if all it takes is to cleave Nama in half with an anti-magic sword, then I don't think he's as impressive as Zagrid. But we'll see. It's one of those things that could literally just come down to a sentence where one of them says something about Zagrid, where they call Zagrid either way stronger than them or always way weaker than us. Something like that. Because the only thing right now is like the whole fact that they're on the Qliphoth tree, but they're on the Qliphoth tree for the first floor. Zagrid could easily just be from a higher floor. But it's something just to wait for in the next chapter. I'm sure it'll get addressed soon, just from interaction. Because one of the things also that I haven't really liked about Lilith and Nama, and I'm really hoping that Lilith doesn't get beaten in the next chapter. I'm hoping she just takes things more seriously and we get to see a serious version from these characters, because they were playing, but at the same time it's like, how dumb do you have to be, Nama, to just rush right into this opponent that you've just seen has the means to deal with your abilities? Like, Nama is not that smart, and at least Lilith didn't get chopped, and just from a bias standpoint, because Black Clover does need a good ice user, so hopefully Lilith will start fighting seriously next chapter. Maybe we'll get that fusion thing happen, or we'll get to see like a heart exposed and see like a double heart from Nama. I don't know. Either way, it was a really fast chapter. The things mostly that I wanted to talk about were just about kind of the aspects about like the devil hierarchy
and exactly like the mechanics have how Asta's swords and Devil Union power work. Because that's something that I think really needs to get to. Whenever Tabata ends up showing some of these really crazy powers, and you leave certain ones open and waiting to find out their limitations, you get the best example in my case is like people who like super mega version take Dorothy and like Dorothy feats, and then we just waited, and then we had that nice Captain episode where Yami just spatial cuts his way out of there, and I was like, sweet. So Dorothy fanboys can calm down finally. And that's one of the things that's kind of going on right now, Asta. But like Asta, I feel like we know Asta's got certain limitations and rulings to it, but we're willing to be more patient just because he's the main character. But anyway, other than that though, comment below, tell me your thoughts are about this chapter and what you thought about this Black Clover chapter itself. It was a really fast read, and the chapter itself, I didn't have a lot to say. It was more about parts of it specifically. But anyway, other than that though, comment below, thumbs up for the like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. But other than that, appreciate it. If you already subscribed, thank you all for listening. Bye.